Yo, it's your boy JD Costa.
It's your girl Katniss.
And I'm the one and only Tay Jordan.
And together we are
the Nitty Gritty.
It's Tim Wise. You're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
Everybody, this is Stephen Powell. You're now watching the Nitty Gritty Show. Check it out.
Hey, my name is Sherman Moss, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
Hi, I'm Pastor Grant Thompson, aka G. Ainsworth, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
Hey, I'm Anthony White, and this is the Nitty Gritty Show.
Yeah. Man, it's Jay Thompson. You're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
This is Max Powers, and you are watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
My name is Jay Grant Thompson, and guess what? You're in tune to the Nitty Gritty Show.
I'm Will Jawando, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
Hey, my name is Mitch Holmes, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
This is Adeline Sandy. Go watch the Nitty Gritty Show.
This is Pastor Rob, and you're on the Nitty Gritty Show.
I'm Ray Pittman, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
Hey, this is Shondy Ford of Fort Wilderness, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
Yo, what's going on? It's your boy Benny Black, and you are watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
It's time for the Nitty Gritty. Conversations get real live. It's time for the Nitty Gritty. The revolution's not televised. It's time for the Nitty Gritty. Reaching out to your conscious mind. It's time for the Nitty Gritty. More than talking, you taking action. It's time for the Nitty Gritty.
Hey, what's going on, world? What's going on, Facebook? Everybody catching us live on WLVS or listenvisionlive.com. It's your boy, Jay DeCosta.
It's your girl Katniss.
And the one and only Tay Jordan can't be here, but you with us in spirit, boo. Together we are
the Nitty Gritty.
Got a great show lined up for you guys today. We have Kelly Fox here. He's fearless in the 43rd, running for the 43rd delegates. Yeah, district.
State Delegate in the 43rd District of Baltimore City.
Yeah. So really excited to have you on. I had an opportunity to come to one of your events out there in Baltimore.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure meeting you. I was, thoroughly impressed. And, one of my colleagues, Sven Waru, so to know that y'all had something in common outside of being a Sigma. But no, I was really impressed the way that people embraced you. And seeing like you have a great community up there that you're going to be fighting for. I'm really excited to talk about all the different things you're going to be doing in Baltimore. Hopefully, you will be doing because you're going to get elected.
Speaking into existence.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for having me on the show. It's really just a pleasure and honor to be here.
Yeah, so really excited. We're going to definitely get into that. But tell our guests a little bit about you. Kelly Fox is a product of the 43rd, so he didn't just show up there, implant it there, and then decide to change things. Product of the 43rd, went to elementary school, middle school, high school. College, Morgan, because, that's part of the 43rd District.
It is, yeah.
And had a whole life there, vice president of a large bank out there in the area for commercial lending. Yeah. So, maybe we need to talk afterwards about, what we can do to try to make sure that more of our folks get up into that opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
So, and I know you have a lot of things you want to do around making sure you present opportunities for all. And I guess you've seen that firsthand.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So, go ahead.
I have. It's really important that we engage everybody in our communities. We deal with a lot of lack of moral fiber and those kind of things in our communities because we're not engaging everybody. Based on your social and economic background, sometimes people get ignored. And so this Fearless in the 43rd is not about me running so much for state delegate, but it's a movement to get everybody engaged and do stuff like you're talking about. Get people involved with learning how to acquire monies to build their businesses and having a voice politically and those kind of things. So, that's what it's all about, really.
Yeah, and then you're also the pastor of Shining Light Ministries. So, you just have a whole life dedicated to the people. It's nice being from there. And I think it probably does a lot for those around, seeing you kind of like make that rise, see one of their own, take on that role. So that's amazing. And, we'll get more into that, but definitely happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
I think you're going to bring a lot of knowledge here, and I'm hoping that a lot of the Baltimore people catch this because they're going to really gain a lot. But, of course, we have two segments we'd like to go into at the Nitty Gritty. We like to give out these to hell withs, and we always have blessings to give. We keep it balanced. But to hell with. Now, first one is really sad. There's a video circulating around Facebook lately, and it actually was sent to me by an extended family member, and I was really upset by it. But I didn't even click on it to watch it. But it's obvious child porn. Young girl doing a very lewd act from at least the clipping of the video. You can tell that it's really jacked up what's going on. And people's thought process behind putting this video out is, oh, we want to expose the guy that's doing this so the cops get him. No, that's stupid. That's just submitting child porn to your friends, relatives, and all the social media. If you ever come across child porn or any kind of lewd act, it's not the first thing you're not supposed to do is go onto your social media and repost it. If anything, if it has come to you via social media, tag the cops to it. Alert them. Say, hey, look, I have a really bad video. Where do I send it so you guys can investigate it and do something about it? Send it to the FBI. If it's child porn, that goes right into their jurisdiction. That crosses state lines. So even if it's a video being shared in California, put that in the hands of the authorities. Don't put it in the hands of family members. That's disgusting and it's sick.
Not only that, as the child gets older, this is what they're going to be remembered by. You know what I'm saying? Like this video is going viral. So maybe the child may be 5 and doesn't really understand what's going on now, but by age 7 and 8, oh, you're the girl that was doing that act to that man. Imagine the emotional damage I can have on a child. So I totally agree with you. If you have a situation like that or you see a video that is damaging, send it to the authorities and you don't have to get something out to go viral by sharing it all over social media. You can still get justice by just submitting it to the proper authorities and let them take care of what they need to take care of.
Yeah, I think people are so engaged in social media, they forget that we live in a real world where we do have real authorities. Even in these elections, one thing that's been a constant theme, even on this show with the various politicians we've had on is, it's great to like a post and it's great to say that, hey, support Kelly Fox, be fearless in the 43rd. But you know what? The best way the 43rd can support you is donate money and come out and vote.
And share the word, share the message.
Yeah, like that's how we're going to really post things out. I mean, we're happy to have platforms like this, and we use social media as a tool. But the real work is done in person.
Absolutely,
and that's why the Nitty Gritty show is always big on showing up, because we know that we have to act in the real world to ignite change. So it had to give it to hell with to that. Also, the other one, I can't leave him out. People don't like the fact that I bring up Donald Trump so much, but you gotta hold. 45. You gotta hold him accountable to the office he's in. Like, there's people that want to say, "Oh, he's not my president," but he's the president of the United States. And if he's going to be your president, whether you voted for him or not, you should want to hold him accountable to his careless acts. You got to call him out on him every chance you get. You need to let your congressman know. You need to let your governor know. We don't stand for this crap, and we want to make sure you're representing us the correct way. And let him know we're not satisfied with the way he conducts his business. So had to give him to hell with because of the State of the Union address, mainly because there were so many things he tried to take credit for that the previous administration actually signed into order.
Absolutely.
If you look at the trend of jobs, if you look at the trending up of jobs and the economy, all those things were already on the upward trend with the Obama administration. All the things we wanted to go down, like unemployment, they were already trending down with the Obama administration. He's just feeling the residue of a great administration that really wanted to do something for the people. The only thing you could probably give him credit for is the stock market. Right?
And that's based on fear.
Fear and speculation because of what they think he may do for the mega rich. Absolutely. And and he's been beneficial. I know the company I work for, they got kickbacks from it. I'm not trying to say they necessarily support it or whatever, but I do know that a lot of companies, they're going to get paid under this administration with the tax reform. But once again, trickle down economics, as we've seen with Reagan and in countless other examples, that doesn't work. Doesn't help the people. And then when you think about Baltimore, it's not going to help them. And we're going to talk more about that. And then blessings too. It's really sad. A lot of people don't even know the history of Black History Month, how it got started. So to enlighten you all, Carter G. Woodson, 1926, wanted to commemorate the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and also Frederick Douglass. So that's why it became Negro Week. There's all these people, I call them the Timbuktu Twitter. They get on there and say, why is it February? It's a speculation. So they got to give the black folks the smallest month. No, black men decided to put it there because he wanted to commemorate folks who have been very big tools of pushing the movement at that early time. And he wanted to commemorate them. It wasn't until 1976 we decided to push it to a whole month at the 50th anniversary. So I think it's important that people understand their history and know why we have it. Learning is a powerful tool. And then also got to have a Black History Month fact. John Mercer Langston was the first black man to become a lawyer in 1854 when he passed the bar in Ohio, the great state of Ohio. Katniss is from Ohio here. And also one of the first African Americans to be elected into a public office as the town clerk. He is also the great uncle of Langston Hughes, famed poet of the Harlem Renaissance. And it's amazing that 154 years later, is when we put the first black person into the highest office of the country. And I think this is a really cool history moment because sometimes the things we do today echo in history. So he may have never known that what he did was going to set the stage for another black man to become a lawyer at a prestigious college at Harvard University and later become the president of these United States. So it's important that the things we do in our society now, the things that we do in our community, one day, 100 years, maybe 154 years from now, you're setting the stage for the next person to do it to a bigger level than you ever did. So I think it's really important that we have civil servants like yourself or people aspiring to do so. We want to get down to the nitty gritty now. We have a quick video we're going to play. BBC did this video in 2017 and just kind of giving an escape of Baltimore and some of the thoughts there. They got a lot of different views from people there. I think you'll be able to speak very clearly to this being a native of Baltimore. So we're going to play this video and then we're going to get down to the nitty gritty.
Sounds good.
Roll that video for me, Jay.
Say hello to Jackson, a citizen of the wealthiest country the world has ever known. And yet, he's clothed in handouts. His parents can't find work.
Say hi.
They have no home of their own. And every morning, they come to the Manor House charity, where the poor of Baltimore meet for a little food, warmth, and compassion.
What is your message to President Trump?
Come and help us. Instead of critiquing us, come help us. And you will see that we need help. Bad.
Like much of America, this is a story of two worlds. Baltimore is actually something of a boomtown these days. But it doesn't feel like it in many parts of the city. In this economy, there is no trickle-down. Gun crime is surging here. Baltimore was even more violent than Chicago last year, driven by gang turf wars. For some of its residents, this is a city where selling your body or selling drugs is the only job available. If you want to know what poverty in America looks like, well, this is it. Incredibly, this entire block here is pretty much made up of dilapidated, abandoned houses. Incredibly, some people are still living in between this, though. Under President Obama, poverty grew in America, and President Trump says he's going to fix it. He's going to deal with what he calls the carnage in America, of crime, of drugs, of gangs, of violence, and of poverty. Well, there are few places better to try and do that than Baltimore. Marcus Alsop has lived here for 40 years. He repairs the city's homes, an eyewitness to the worst Baltimore has to offer.
The poor living are in the single houses, the row houses in Baltimore City where they're generally rat infested regardless of what you do as a person living there. Roaches, mice, an epidemic in bed bugs. The neighborhoods are falling apart, not because the people are bad people. We're underpaid, undereducated, and so many of us have been living like this for the second and third generation until we don't even know how to change. Despair is a way of living.
And this is where it resides, on a bleak row of abandoned homes. This is the end of the line for Americans gripped by poverty. Here we met the last family living on the block. 3 generations of the Stewart family are crammed in here. They're months behind on the rent. Unpaid bills are piling up. Not surprising when they have just $30 a day to survive.
And if you were to watch the whole clip, it goes into a little detail about a family that's living in a block of almost all abandoned homes. And it's weird because when you go to Baltimore, you'll see one whole block that's amazing, and they have little small brunch spots, and then you literally go 2 blocks over, and it's wow, where Bethel AME sits, it's that little area is cool, and then you just go 1 block over, and it's I thought I was just at Bethel, and then you go 1 more block over, and then you got little brunch spots opening up. It's weird how things interject in Baltimore, but I really appreciate the fact that you're going for this this rollout here, and you're going to do your thing in the community. And I want to talk a little bit about your background and being from Baltimore. A lot of people's earliest reference of Baltimore, they have 2. Well, they either think about the Ravens, so then that's one mindset, and they only see the how they're fixing that one little piece of town up at the time, or they think about The Wire.
I was going to say, for someone like myself, I don't know much about Baltimore. And in most cities, like in DC, Southeast is considered the area, the last quadrant where a lot of African Americans still live, reside, or your poor income communities. So is Baltimore, is the 43rd in West Baltimore?
It's in Northeast Baltimore.
It's Northeast Baltimore. And what is the demographic looking like in Northeast Baltimore?
We've got a very diverse district in the 43rd district. So we have some very affluent areas in the 43rd district, and then we have which is known as the Coldstream Homestead Montebello area, which is a more challenged area economically, right? Where you see those kind of blighted houses that we looked at before. And because, unfortunately, certain areas of Baltimore City and even in our district don't have as high of a tax base, or they don't generate as much taxes as the other communities, sometimes they get ignored, right? And so one of the reasons why I'm running in the 43rd district is to make sure everybody's voices matters. Everybody matters in the district. So whether you are generating taxes or not, we need to take care of everybody in the district. We need to make sure that everything is distributed fairly and equitably, because if we don't make people stakeholders, then they're not going to take care of the communities. They're not going to look at it as home, right? And so that's why you see the rise in crime in certain areas, right? Because it's not their home. If you make a person a homeowner, they're going to take better care of that home because it's theirs. If they're renting, they're not going to take care of it. And so we've got a bunch of renters in certain parts of the state of Maryland and parts of Baltimore City that we need to help them become homeowners. And so that's why I'm running, is because everybody's not being heard, everybody's not being taken care of. And it's time that we have someone in office who understands that the way that we come out of this crime issue is not by policing our way out of it, but by taking care of everybody and making sure that everybody has a voice.
I appreciate that too. And then also, the fact that you're from Baltimore, because because we know what Baltimore looks like now and the challenges now. But like growing up there, was it always like that, or did you see a certain time where it changed?
So the moral fiber of, I think, our country has changed overall, right? But Baltimore has always been sort of segregated based on your socioeconomic background, right? The reality is this. There are a limited amount of resources that come into each city, each state, and politicians typically allocate those funds based on who's voting and where the tax base is. So if I only got a handful of resources and I've got to choose where I allocate them, unfortunately, those people who are not voting, those people who are not generating their tax base, is not as important to the politician or those people in leadership that are allocating funds to those people who can keep them in office, right? Who can generate more funds for the community, right? So that's sort of the reason why we've dug a hole for ourselves, right? Is because we're putting a Band-Aid on the situation. We're not saying, okay, in order for us to make it safe for my grandchildren to come along, that we gotta, on the front end, build people up, right? If you build people up from the bottom to the top, they will never leave you. They will never forsake you, because they understand that you took the time to pour into them. They understand that you took the time to give them an opportunity where they didn't have it before, right? But people don't see it. Politicians especially, unfortunately, they don't see it. Elections are every 4 years. It's a strategy that takes at least 10 years to be effective. And so what we're doing is we're running for office rather than really helping people, right? And I always tell people it's a difference between being in your purpose and being in a position, right? If you're in your purpose, you understand that nobody can take anything away from you that God has ordained for you. So you can do what needs to be done and say what needs to be said without fear of it being taken away. But if you're just in a position, now, you're afraid to do things because you think somebody's going to take it from you, that you're not going to be able to retain what it is that you have, right? And so we got to get beyond that. We've got to begin to empower people, make a difference in our communities. And if people don't like what you're doing, you got to be courageous enough to say, vote me out. But I know I did what was right in the eyes of God, and I did what I was purposed here to do.
Yeah, and you preaching on today too. The preacher is in you. I can hear it.
I was going to say, just talking to different people about voting, and a lot of people feel like voting doesn't work. And they feel like politicians are sneaky and that politicians can't be trusted. And because you are rooted in faith, how do you identify yourself as a man coming from faith and being a politician, knowing that there is a stigma against those who are politicians?
So I don't look at myself as a politician.
Okay.
I look at myself as a person in his purpose, a God-ordained purpose. And so that's what it is. You know what I mean? And if you look at politicians as some people that are dishonest and that kind of thing, well, you know, that's not who I am. I'm just doing what God has called me to do. And people have got to do their research. They've got to look at people's whole history. So that's the other thing is, too many times around election time, we kind of look at the last 2 years of a person's track record and decide, okay, this is the person for the job. No, you've got to look at the person's whole history and the whole character of a person and what they've done from day one till now to determine if this person really has the best interest of our communities and of these situations. And so I think we've got to do a better job as voters and, you know, kind of doing our research and looking at the people who are running. The other thing I would say is we're allowing people, the system, the establishment to dictate to us who our leaders should be. Rather than growing our own leaders, right? And so if I see this leadership quality in this sister, or I see this leadership quality in that brother, we've got to begin to build that person up so that they may lead this. We got to grow our own. You know, we got to put the legs, the money, the resources behind those people that we know have the best interests of our community. And that'll change the stigma of our leadership if we just kind of build our own.
And, you know, and I feel like that's important that you bring that up because you went to Morgan University, and you know so many stories of when you hear about black people that come out of maybe the best of situations or, you know, middle class, whatever situation they come from. You always hear about people who have to leave an area. You know, they have to leave a city like Baltimore in order to get better. You know, I had to go way down to, you know, the University of Maryland, or I had to go to Harvard, or I had to go to, you know, the Ohio State University, wherever. I had to leave where I came from, but you stayed home the whole time, and then you started, you know, building something at your home.
Absolutely.
And I think that speaks to a unique story because so often you hear about people who have to leave and then come back, or they leave and forget. And the fact that, you know, you've become a vice president of a large financial institution, and you literally climbed the corporate ladder, and you didn't have to leave home through it all. You've been right there in the 43rd, and I feel like that's unique in itself.
Well, you know, for me, I've always known that I had work to do in the 43rd district, so it was never an option. My wife is from West Orange, New Jersey, and she spoke about when we got married the possibility of us moving out of state. But I've always known that my purpose was in the 43rd district, and that I was going to make a way in the 43rd district regardless of whatever happened. So I just don't give up. That's the deal. Is that, you know, I know that I was placed there for a reason. I know that there are opportunities out there, and I'm not going to stop driving until I reach those opportunities and do what it is that I know God has called me to do. So it's just endurance, and we've got to start building our young people with the endurance to make a difference where they are. We can't allow our young people to continue to run away from issues. We got to show them how to fix issues, how to fight through situations, and just empower, you know, their own situation, right? And I think, you know, far too often we take the easy way out, right? But the easy way out never builds character, right? And that's where you get, you know, you talk about the negative stigma around politicians, right? The easy way out, you know, the 2-year plan, you know, the 9-month election, rather than, you know, building yourself and being stretched in that very situation and allowing God to mold you into what it is that you're supposed to be. So you got to be willing to stay where you are and let God do his thing in your life. And if you do that, he's always going to make a way for you. He's always going to do it.
Amen to that.
Yes.
Now how long, I gotta ask, because, you know, and I hear it in your conversation. I remember even when I met you before at one of your rallies and your gatherings. I mean, it was just obvious in your conversation. It was obvious in the people who surround you that God is a big part of your life. I mean, you're not just pastor and like I do my preaching. I remember our pastor once told me that 95% of your ministry, or even 99% of the ministry, is not what you do on the platform or on the pulpit, but what you do off of it. Yes. And I feel like, even though I've only interacted with you now twice, I feel like I have some, you know, that's looking around you and the people you've placed around you that this is who you really are. You know, this is not like a facade that you put on. Did you grow up in the church? Have you always been in the church?
No, I didn't grow up in the church. I actually, I was a pretty wild child. You know, I've seen a lot of things and I've done a lot of things. Done a lot of things, and I thank God for my wilderness experience, because it built me into who I am today, right? Amen. So I've seen so many things from so many different perspectives, and it's uniquely equipped me to be able to matriculate in any environment. So I can go on the street corner and talk to the drug dealer. I can talk to the drug addict. I can go to the boardroom and I can make a deal that's going to benefit people. You know, I can go anywhere. I can go to the State House and I can draft legislation to change laws that's going to meet people right where they are and not go over their head, because I've been there and done that. And so that's why I think I'm uniquely qualified to be the state delegate of the 43rd District. I've been a youth and family therapist. I'm a pastor, I'm a banker. So I understand how to build wealth in our communities. I understand the importance of having a spiritual foundation that's going to build character and keep people on the straight and narrow. I understand that mental health, mental illness should not have a negative stigma, right? And I understand that mental illness is one of the reasons why we're dealing with a drug epidemic in our society, is because there's a negative stigma on mental illness, and people, instead of people going to the hospital or going to professional treatment, they're trying to self-medicate, right? And so I understand that we've got to remove the negative stigma from mental illness, and we've got to put forth policies and legislation in place that even if you're not insured, that you've got to be taken care of from a mental health perspective. And if we do that, we're going to deal with the addictions issues in our city. We're going to deal with the drug and the killing and the violence in our city. But right now we're not doing that. We're trying to police our way out of something that is much deeper than locking people up.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to touch on drug addicts and what so have you. So I know that one thing that's inherently true about Baltimore is that homelessness resides, drug addicts resides, and abandonment it resides. Because of all those things, how much does that affect the income that you talk about? It seems like Maryland, at least, from what you just said earlier, is really pushing the emphasis of, if you pay tax dollars, that's how buildings can emerge, that's how jobs can emerge, that's how your city can get turned around. And because inherently Baltimore has adverse things affecting it, what suggestions do you have, or what do you plan to do to help kind of remove those stigmas and kind of revitalize Baltimore with those issues?
So first, we've got to, those people who have been traditionally ignored in our communities, we've got to help build them up. We've got to show them the importance of engaging the process, right? And so if we get them registered to vote, you know, if we help rehabilitate them, or in many times habilitate them so that they're employable and employed, then they become the voice that has to be heard, right? So we've got to build people up in our communities, and we do that, again, through job readiness programs. We mandate the funds from the state level down to the city level so that we have those programs up and running so people can learn how to be employed. There are many programs that are already in the community, but all too often our leaders are not pointing people in the right direction, right? You know, addictions, like you talked about, or the houses, abandoned houses in our community. We've got to reallocate funds. At the end of the day, let me tell you something. If you ignore certain blighted communities, crime is going to go up, and the crime is going to spread to your community next. And so I think people in Baltimore are beginning to see that I can't ignore a community that has less resources than mine, because eventually, if they got to walk, if they got to catch the bus, they're going to come to my community and they're going to rob me. So we've got to equally divide resources so that people are empowered enough to kind of stand up and be a part of the process and a part of the system.
One last question. How hard is it to get state mandated laws to come down to the city level? Is it difficult?
So from a state level, it's about the allocation of funds, right? And
Okay.
so from different committees, we actually, or the state legislators, earmark funds to go to different areas and zones of the state of Maryland, right? And so based on the pressure that they get from the community determines at the end of the day where funds and resources are allocated, right? So if we find our people who have not been taken care of in Annapolis, you know, unfortunately, lobbying and speaking up, if we see that in these communities with lesser resources that they're coming out in droves to vote, then you can bet your bottom dollar that funds will begin to flow into those communities to help those situations. But it's about us doing the heavy lifting, right? So it's not easy to roll your sleeves up and go on the corners and knock on doors and tell people in a non-election year that this is what you need to do to help better your situation. See, we can't sit, in the State House, in this ivory tower all year long until election season and then go knock on doors. This has got to be an everyday, all-day thing where we go out and we're touching people everywhere we go. We're empowering people. That's the first responsibility. I don't care whether you're a city legislator or a state legislator. It's your first responsibility is to take care of people and let people know where the resources can be accessed. And so I think we need to do a better job at that.
Yeah, and something I also wanted to bring up too, because you're running for the 43rd delegate seat.
Yes.
For the state, but a lot of people don't even know what their delegate is or what he does. So if you could just tell our viewers, what is the delegate? What does the delegate do for the 43rd, and what's your role in improving that part of the district or the whole state, or rather?
Okay. So a state delegate drafts legislation to actually assist communities in growing, whether the legislation is dealing with education and the funding of education and how that funding is going to happen, or whether it's environmental matters, right? And whether we're going to save green space in certain areas of Baltimore City. So we actually draft legislation, and I'm claiming it, right? So we actually draft legislation to ensure that resources are allocated appropriately to certain districts or certain areas of Baltimore City. And we actually put policies in place to ensure that structures educationally are in place, that our kids can be educated, and that different systems in our Baltimore City have the legs to stand on to be effective.
Yeah, and then I think that's important too, because I think another reason why we've failed even as a community when it comes to voting and being active in legislative process is that we don't understand it. Mm-hmm. We kind of know what the executive branch is. We know that's the president. We kind of remember that there's a legislative branch, with Congress and Senate. And then some people might even know that there's a judiciary branch and that those judges are even elected into office. But too often we don't know the inner workings of our various states or our cities. And then as a result, we don't vote because we don't see the importance of it. Like they don't understand that, when you're voting for a council member, that's how your roads are going to get fixed.
Absolutely.
Or, people are crying out that, hey, Baltimore needs more money for schools and for this. But what they don't realize is you not voting for Kelly Fox and individuals like you are the reason why you guys don't why people don't have the funding that they need. Mm-hmm. Because we're not getting the right people in office early enough on. And then what happens is, because the system is more concerned about who's voting and who's paying taxes, well, even if you don't have money, you can still have a voice through voting.
Absolutely.
And if you have a voice through voting, they got to hear you. And you've said that, and that's kind of been a theme as you've been speaking. I've been hearing, trusting in God and building up people, but I've also been hearing that, having a voice through voting.
Absolutely.
And I think people just really need to drive that home. There's a voice in voting. Like when you submit that vote, people have to take you serious. Even if you don't have money, they know that, hey, look, I may not have a seat next year if I don't take care of these people. So Absolutely. They may not have money, but they come out to vote every year in mass. Yes. I need that vote.
Absolutely.
All the time when we're watching the news, when it's getting close, they start breaking it down by county, by block, trying to see where these votes are coming from. Mm-hmm. And when our communities don't show up to vote, they just automatically glass over that. Well, they're not going to show up. But this is important right here.
Can we? Maybe the history. What do you think happened? Because back in the 60s or early on, they were denied privileges to vote, and those people knew every law. Mm-hmm. They knew who was running, where they were running. It was like literally, they would go to churches and congregate and study the law, so they would say, you cannot deny me my right to vote. But then as times went on, it seems like voting didn't become important to us. We don't really know much about the laws, myself included. You don't have to read a book or have to ask questions. It's not like something that I can go to church and Sister So-and-so can tell me, this is where you go, baby, and this is who you need to talk to, and this is who you need to call. Mm-hmm. So do you think that maybe having churches bring back that congregation of educating people? Because, church and politics was a really big part of the Black community back in those days. Do you think that would be the solution possibly?
Yeah, but so first of all, back in the 60s, people had faith in church, right? And so
yeah,
that's true.
People don't have that anymore, right? And so we've got to get back to really loving people where they are, right? Mm-hmm. Church can't be a judgmental place. It's got to be like Jesus. He loved all people, and he was very welcoming, right? And so if we get back to that, we'd mobilize people within churches, and then we can influence those people and educate those people to get become more of the process, right? And to get back to what you were saying in the 60s where, this moral fiber was there, right? Well, the deal is that, everybody was working class poor, and this was, post-desegregation, right?
That's true.
And so I'm going to say it, desegregation, I think, was one of the worst things that happened to the African-American community because it divided and conquered us, right? And so you had in the 60s, you had Dr. Wilson living next to the trash man Jackson, and you had, the secretary living next to the attorney, and everybody was in that community. So leadership and people that you could look up to were tangible. You could go right next door and touch them, right? Mm-hmm. But when they desegregated, you had, the more affluent African Americans, the middle class African Americans, and the poor African Americans, and none of the three kind of relate to one another, right? So now, the people in our more urban areas don't relate to, or they live sometimes in this box where they don't understand that it is real that you can become an attorney because the attorney didn't live next door, but maybe the drug dealer did. So that's more real to me than becoming an attorney, right? And so, I think that we've got to begin as pastors, right? To get outside of the church walls and understand that we are the church. We need to get in the highways and byways like Jesus did and love people right where they are. If we begin to do that, people are going to gain a little more confidence and faith in church, right? Because they're going to feel like, a wretch like me can still be loved, right? Mm-hmm. And they're going to be engaged at that point. And once we do that, again, we can build them up from there. But we got to engage them first. We can't just push them outside because their eyes are red or they've had, a drug history and that kind of thing and discount them. Jesus didn't do it to them, and so they have no right to do it to anybody else. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to rebuild church and love people where they are, and then we've got to find a way to make different walks of life tangible to those people who have not been exposed to other walks of life.
Interesting.
Wow, that's definitely important, and that's something that I think enough people don't speak on. I think we've been fortunate on this show, and I guess it's because we do get down to the nitty gritty. We've been fortunate that politicians we have on this show all three of them have been from the area that they are now politicking in or serving in. They're not professional politicians. You guys are actually servants, and I feel like that makes a big difference when you're taking care of the people that you feel like you're next to because you came up with the folks you're serving. And, some of you have some various platforms. One of your first ones is education. I want to play a quick video because it's a little snippet talking about some of the stuff. Baltimore got seriously highlighted this year with the heat crisis. Yep. And this video is going to talk about that. And then we're going to go into education. I know that's one of your big pillars. Okay. And definitely want to get through some of that. Jay, can you play that video for us real quick?
Another round of complaints from you. Baltimore parents are still upset about the cold temperatures inside city school classrooms.
So now the teachers union is demanding that all schools be closed for the week until the problem is fixed. ABC 2 News' Skylar Henry is live now in Northwest Baltimore with more on the problem and the response they're getting from the school district. Skylar?
Yeah, Kelly, we are in front of the Teachers Union headquarters here in Northwest Baltimore. The union president, Marietta English, actually sent a letter into the school district calling the conditions inside those classrooms both, quote, utterly ridiculous and unhealthy. Now, Dr. Sonia Santelises, the CEO for Baltimore City Schools, actually just wrapped up a Facebook Live saying it's too simplistic to close all the schools in the district. So they're going to review each school in a case-by-case basis to determine whether or not the school should be closed. Still, it's frustrating for a lot of parents and their students.
Maybe Baltimore City need to do a better job at their maintenance.
Yeah.
Maybe they need more help.
Bobby Harris was on his way to the dealership when he got a call from a neighbor asking for help with a pickup.
I'm frustrated when I have to stop what I'm doing to pick up either my grandkids or someone else's child, yes.
He, like other parents, caught off guard by an alert from city schools about an early dismissal from Cecil Elementary and Frederick Douglass High School for a busted water main.
He has a brother at home that's sick, so I'm caring for his brother at home, and I'm his grandmother, so I'm like in a rush getting back home to him.
A rush that should have been prevented, says Baltimore Teachers Union President Marietta English. She says neither students nor teachers should have been in those classrooms with temperatures below freezing.
And again, we had calls about frigid weather
and the temperatures in classrooms, and just unhealthy conditions in the schools.
In a letter sent to the school district, English points out teachers and students have been in classrooms, quote, bundled up in coats, hats, and gloves because of several schools having no heat. An unconducive environment to learn in, she says, that isn't fair to those in the classroom.
The room is still cold.
So, and you're hearing various feedback in the city and all that. And there was a stat that we had brought up off air. I know me, you, and Sven had talked about it at your event. Now, remind me of the numbers. It was like $66 million that they had to return back to the state, Baltimore City, for improvements.
In 2015 and through 16, Baltimore City had to return $66 million back to the state for capital improvement. That was earmarked for capital improvements. And the problem is that the educators that were in place didn't know how to manage that in a way that they could retain this money and execute. So they had to return it back to the state, right?
Wow.
And so we've got educators, right? And we're asking them to manage capital improvements. See, that's one of the things that from a state perspective, we need to deal with, right? We need to put an arm in place so that we can allow these educators to educate our kids and stick to what they're professional or what they've been trained in. We need to put an arm in place where there's an arm that manages these capital improvements so that we don't ever have, what happened in 2015 and 16 to happen, because we've got professionals who've been trained to do that in place, and we don't have that. We're trying to ask educators to do everything. We're trying to ask them to parent. We're asking them to manage capital improvements as well as help our kids learn and pass standardized tests. And we're asking them to do too much.
Yeah, and that's a lot of work. And I think very often do we hear that narrative. It's just the teachers and the principals are not interested in learning, but a lot of times they're not. They're interested in having the politic for their jobs because they're just trying to get them over the hump for the standardized test. And then you throw on this workload of now I have to be a parent because we're not taking care of the mental illnesses and various factors that create poor environments that these kids come from. And then the other thing you said, the administrative part that they're being asked to do. And a lot of people don't know that. So all we saw was that, wow, they don't have heat. Right. And a lot of us was because water mains and all that were bursting, but that was the stuff that would have been taken care of under that $66 million. Absolutely. But not having the right people in place to do those things, the one piece crumbles and then it all goes down eventually.
Absolutely.
No, go ahead.
Well, one of the things we talk about when we talk about education always comes up is money, right? We need more money. We need to manage the money more appropriately. And I do agree that Baltimore City needs more money to operate our schools. But at the end of the day, studies show that it's not money that makes a difference in our kids' advancement in education. It's parental involvement, right? And so if we get our parents involved, and we've got to do it very strategically, right? If we get our parents involved, I'm telling you there's going to be a marked difference in our scholastic achievement in our children. But the way you do that is this. There are parents in Baltimore City and all over the country who want to be engaged in their children's education, but because they work a 9 to 5 and they've got to be at work at 7 a.m. and they don't get off until 8 p.m., they can't be involved. Well, we need to mandate that employers in the state of Maryland allow a certain amount of hours per month that they have to allow that employee to be engaged in the school without being penalized.
Yeah.
Right?
I like that. That would be cool.
Absolutely. So that the parents don't feel like they're going to be penalized by, going to their schools and being a part of that process with their children. And we can do that as a state, right? It's not unheard of. It's something we can do, but we got to bring it up and we got to fight for it.
Yeah, because there's definitely a stigmatism towards parents, especially single parents. And then, not every single parent is a result of just some woman who had a bunch of kids by a bunch of guys. I mean, we're living in a war era country where, guys that I was in the military with, some of them have served almost 6-7 tours. They're my age, 33 years old, 34 years old, and they've had 6 or 7 tours already. So we live in an environment where more and more people are being deployed. Also, people just don't stay together the same way. So you could be classified as a single parent. But when parents have to do parenting, when they have to leave the job for an emergency or whatever, there's a stigmatism, and sometimes we see those women or those men that are in that position being denied opportunities to move up in that company because it's like, oh well, that's so and so with the kids, or they make little comments in those conversations you have when you're interviewing. Yeah, I know you have 3 kids. Are you going to be able to? And the fact that we can use government to help influence that certain practices are put in place to protect the employee to be also a mother or a father or take care of their due diligence to their community. We do need to put that in place. And I'm happy you bring that up. I think it's interesting that you really understand people, and the fact that you definitely relate that to how policy can influence it. Because sometimes people are so people focused that the policy that they think of is not realistic.
Right.
Or sometimes they're so focused on policy they're not connected to the people anymore. All thing they're doing is running numbers and making sure they stay afloat. They get the position, get elected next year.
Right.
And the fact that you seem to marry both seamlessly, and I feel like it probably has a lot to do with you being a pastor, but because it's not even a question of thinking, like that's just automatically you just see how policy affects people.
If you understand the walk of Jesus, right? Not only was his entrance into Jerusalem about saving souls, but it was coming against the political system of that time, right? And so he was engaged with the politics as well as the people, right? It was a holistic approach he took in order to move us forward, right? And so if we understand that, then we can't be led wrong, right? It's just easy at that point. We can't be so singularly focused that we don't meet people holistically where they are. And the best example of that was Jesus, and that's what I go by.
I like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you talk about government and government understanding people, for me, working in public health, I feel like a lot of times we'll give these funds to like different nonprofits in the city, and we have all these programs, and people always say to like people who are homeless or impoverished, oh, we have help. The city has support for you. But in my opinion, the programs don't work because they don't really understand the people. And I don't know if there is a way to connect government funding, people who are making the big decision to write these checks so that they can actually come down to the city, talk to people living in the community. What do you guys want? What would be effective? And then creating programs that are more so introduced or dictated by people who live in the community. I don't know if that's possible, but I think that would be helpful because I feel like a lot of times these free programs aren't beneficial because they don't understand the people who are living in these adverse conditions.
Yeah, I totally agree. I used to be a youth and family therapist, and so I used to see where we were missing our children. We were actually told not to mention certain things because it would create a negative impact on the funding that we were getting to help children.
Oh, they told you don't say certain things.
Don't say certain things. And that's one of the reasons why I got involved in politics and out of therapy is because I wanted to change those laws, right? We've got people, we're shipping people from, different states who are not from the area to be part of these commissions and committees to put forth, regulations for these programs that you're talking about, right? And so we've got to get stakeholders involved with, putting together, like you said, there's ways to put people on commissions and boards and that kind of thing in order to make sure that a very real perspective is put in place to deal with people, right? And if we don't do that, and if everything is about a political favor, so this is somebody who donated to my campaign, this is somebody who, a friend of a friend, if that's what it's always going to be about, we're always going to miss the people. We've got to take people right out of neighborhoods. I don't care what their background is. If they understand, if they've been a part of that demographic, their voice is important because we've got to understand where you come from, right? And so we can force that issue. I did it. We had in my community, we've got a YMCA. It's called Stadium Place. And they bought this big, committee, and they put that in place and said, okay, this is what we're giving you in your community. And I said, oh, no, you're not. Not without our say. And so I said we would bring the whole community against that YMCA and the development of it if you don't put one of us on the committee. And so that's how I ended up on the Weinberg YMCA Board of Directors, is because we needed somebody from our community to have a voice. And then we put together a subcommittee where it was a community committee of all the presidents around that Weinberg YMCA so they could be advisories to the Board of Directors. So it can be done, and you don't have to be a legislator to do it. You just got to be willing to stand up and say, oh, no, you don't. This is how it's going to go down, and stick to your guns. Be willing to lose something to gain everything.
I like that. And you know what? And it's I think it's really important to have people from the area. Baltimore is getting a lot of love right now from the Nitty Gritty Show, because just last week we had Lawrence Sanders on, and he's the president of Outcast Food Network.
Yep.
And, he was talking about just the struggle of getting funds, or, how you have to apply for various grants to help. And the thing unique about his program, they're really into taking care of food insecurity. And they're taking care of, primarily their focus right now is Baltimore, but they want to grow past that. But one thing that they do that he mentioned was that a lot of times when people help is that they don't really care about the people. They do the job just to say okay, I gave out the food, but then they don't really mingle and get down with the people. And one thing that they do different, and I've seen their testimonial videos, they actually, after they feed the people, they offer them prayer, they offer them assistance. They actually have various other programs in the city that they just recommend people to say, hey, look, if you need help with this, or if you need help with drug addiction, we know about this program here you can go to. And they're not afraid to say, hey, look, we don't have all the answers, so since it's not a part of our program, we don't recommend it. They're really trying to reach out there and partner. And I think that it's nice to see that, within Baltimore, despite all what you hear about Baltimore, there's people in Baltimore like yourself and the Lawrence Sanders of the world that are really trying to do a great work in the city. And that's why it's really important that I feel like someone like you become the delegate for the 43rd District. It really is important.
Go ahead.
Sure? We got a little bit of time.
I know.
I wanted to ask you about crime in Baltimore.
Okay.
Because crime, you guys had a brutal year last year where crime-wise, I think you guys were actually worse off than Chicago. Yeah. We heard about, all the stories, Chirac and all of that. What do you think would be some of the key things that you can do as far as funding or in your seat as delegate to help try to turn the tide on crime or the things that create crime in Baltimore?
So early on in my adulthood, I worked for a woman by the name of Ms. B. Gaddy.
Okay.
And Ms. B. Gaddy was, she was just a pillar of the community. She fed people. She clothed people. She was just an angel to our community, a senior citizen in her community in a drug-infested community. And Ms. B could walk outside of her house and look at a drug addict or a drug dealer and say, pull your pants up, get yourself together. And they would just say, yes, Ms. B. And so my thing is that, if we keep the morals, we'll keep our senior citizens in our community. We protect them, stop taxing them out of the community, and we protect them and keep them in communities that they help build and develop. Then you keep the morals and values in that community, right? And so they begin to pour those morals and values into the younger people that come after them, right? But right now, we're eroding that foundation, that moral foundation, because we're pushing our seniors and the values out of the community. And so we've got to do a better job of protecting our seniors, first of all, because we're not going to police our way out of this. You can re-elect another mayor, you can get another police commissioner. The problem's still going to happen until you deal with the values and morals of people. And so if part of it is going to be our seniors. The other part of it is we got to choose leadership that's not afraid to go out in the highways and byways, right? So we've got to know, okay, when I elect this person, that he represents a multitude of people in different places of this district, and we got to know that he's willing to walk out there and say what needs to be said and engage different kinds of people, right? And so right now, I'm not seeing that, a whole lot. I'm not saying I don't see it, but not a whole lot in the way that we need to see it to begin to engage those people who don't see another option, and that's, we talked about that earlier. Some people don't see another option, right? To some people think that they got to sell drugs in order to survive. And it's our responsibility to go out there and show them that there's another way, point them in the right direction, and not just ignore them, right? We got to help organize communities, right? Community policing. So we got to go show communities the kind of programs that they can put in place without a lot of funding, right? So my church is a very small church. We go just 2 weekends ago, we went out, we fed people, we gave out clothing, we gave out toiletries, we prayed with people in the community, and we had no funding to do that. What we did is we asked for donations from a myriad of different places, and they gave it to us, right? And we went out in the community and did it. So just because there's no funding for it doesn't mean that things can't happen in our community. And so we've got to lead people in the right direction so that they can begin to develop programs amongst themselves, as well as in coalition with your legislators and leaders to empower our communities.
I like that.
I know.
Kat, did you have one more question? We're running close to time.
Well, I know we're close to time, so no, I can't say that question, but I will ask. I have to ask because you're from Baltimore. Have you seen The Wire, and how accurate is it to the city? Because everybody that I know that's seen it says that it's literally so accurate because it shows politics, the education system, crime. Is it? To be honest.
So I am from Baltimore. I saw The Wire, and yeah, it is pretty accurate in certain parts of Baltimore City. As much as I hate to say that, it is pretty accurate. And so, unfortunately, it's only in pockets of Baltimore City, though, right? Mm-hmm. And so, we've got to do a better job at highlighting also those positive things that happen in
That's
those
important.
communities. Fulton and North Avenue, if we got time. Fulton and North Avenue, where Freddie Gray, the riots happened.
Yeah.
I was out there trying to calm people down, and one of the things that I was blessed to run into was some gang members who were out there who wanted to know what they could do to stop the riots. And I found out through some Bloods and Crips, leaders of Bloods and Crips, that they actually feed seniors in the community. They actually put together programs to empower young people. But what's happening is they're not getting, they join these organizations because they want to be a part of something. And so they're not given access to join the kind of organizations that's going to show them the right way. So they form their own, right? And they get left out. So when we went to a church in the area to talk about the solution to the issues, they left those gang members on the corner when they had promised that they would take them to be engaged. And they were disappointed because they weren't. So we got to be fearless enough to engage leaders in our community, whether they be positive or negative leaders. If you engage the leaders in the community, then you turn the tide of the pulse of the community. So
yeah, that's how it used to be done back in the day.
Yeah. And highlight the positive things that they do, because at the end of the day, that's what they want to do. They want to be positive. Nobody wants to be negative. They want to be positive. We got to show them how to do it.
I like that. And man, I wish we had more time. We're gonna have you on again.
We're
gonna have you one more time before the elections start up. Can you tell people where they can find you, where they can get information? Okay. I'm so happy that you gave us these shirts today.
Thank you for wearing them. Thank you for wearing them. So how they can find us, and bear with me, it's Fearless in the 43rd, 43rd.rd.com. So Fearless in the 43rd.com. So 43rd, 43rd.rd.com.
Yes, that was.
And is that how they can find you as well, like on social media, Instagram, Facebook?
Elect Kelly Fox. You can find that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All right. I had to look at Sven. He kind of helps me with that.
Got it. So yeah, make sure you guys look him up. Elect Kelly Fox, Fearless in the 43rd. So happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
It was great. Yeah.
It was great. Kat, can you tell our guests where they can find the Nitty Gritty Show?
Yes, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at the Nitty Gritty Show. We are also on Twitter, and our Twitter account is not that active, but we are going to revitalize it, and it is nitty_gritty_TBJ.
All right. So look, it's been another great show. So happy to have you on. I really appreciate it. Also, just like to remind our viewers too, the Nitty Gritty Show, we are serious about doing work in the community as well and spending time with you. If you have an event going on, if you have any projects or whatever you want us to come out and personally see, we will come out to you. That is how we got in touch with Kelly Fox. We actually came to an event, talked to Sven, and we were there. Yeah. So we really get stuff meeting people in the community. Nitty Gritty is about that. So if you want us to come out, spend time with you, volunteer, hit us up. We will be more than glad to do it.
Thank you
once again.
You do, man.
Thank you for coming
so
on.
Appreciate you, man.
I know you're going to get elected. Nitty Gritty Show will do the most we can to push you out there and let people know about what you're doing. And you just keep on being fearless in the 43rd, brother.
Amen.
We appreciate it. Look, it's been another great show. Make sure you guys follow us up on YouTube. Rewatch it if you haven't to. Make sure that when we put it up on Facebook, share with all your friends, especially if you have people in Baltimore or people from Baltimore. Let them know what's going on. There's more to Baltimore than The Wire and the Ravens. We got great things going on, even more so than those crab chips as well. Right? Look, it's another great show in the Nitty Gritty. It's your boy, J.D. Costa.
It's your girl, Katniss.
The one and only Tay Jordan can't be here, but you with us in spirit, boo. We are, and together we are
the Nitty Gritty.
That was a lot to say, y'all. That was a lot to say. Look, we out. Jay, sign us out of here, man. All right.